Hello and welcome to Wising Arts Centre Studio Artists Live. So we're here today with Lawrence Epps, who's one of our studio artists here on site at Wising. And these sessions, as our part of our Wising Studio Artists Lives, are a chance to get to know artists, how they work within their practice, get some creative prompts, and also just get some creative inspiration, find out what it's like being an artist. And these sessions are all part of Discover Creative Careers Week, which is running all day this week from the 1st to the 5th of March. So please do feel free to log into YouTube and ask questions in the chat as we go along, whether there are any comments or questions that you'd like Lawrence to answer. And also as a reminder, if you haven't managed to catch the other sessions, they are now live on our wisingbroadcast.art platform. So do go and check out the other videos there. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence.
Hi, thanks very much. My name is Lawrence Epps, and I'm an artist interested in exploring how we assign value to objects, processes, and people. And yeah, I mainly work with ceramics, and I often combine traditional ceramic making processes taken from industries like brick making or slip casting, and combine it with other technologies like converted fairground machines, films, and app development. I also really enjoy highlighting some of the unwritten rules of the spaces in which I show my work. So highlighting some of the rules of conventions of galleries and museums, for example, playing with ideas that we shouldn't really touch things in museums and we shouldn't really take away things and artworks from art galleries. And to give you more of an idea, it probably makes most sense to look at a couple of pieces of my work. And first of all, I'd like to talk about a piece called Take Stock, which grew out of my time working in an office where I found myself rather in a kind of strange, zoned out space, a mindset, and quite bored and numbed by the environment. And so I ended up working on this piece and making about 4,000 of these extruded ceramic blocks. I'm not sure if you can see them very well here, but they depict people sitting hunched over a computer, sitting at a desk in a ceramic cube, which I made in a clay factory using a machine that's often used to process clay from the quarry into the bag, which you'd end up working with at school or at college or in your studio. And so I built this sculpture that you can hopefully see on the screen now. And I invited the audience to each remove a unit of the sculpture during the show. But I filmed their interactions with the sculpture. And then once the entire sculpture had been removed, I played back that film of them removing the sculpture, but put it in reverse so that the taking of the work ended up looking like the making of the work. And the people that had visited the show ended up keeping the artwork, and the museum was left just with the film and the images of the work afterwards. And what we're going to do now for the next couple of minutes is just watch some highlights of that film to give you more of an idea of how the work went.
So how long was the show up for, Lawrence?
It's about 8 weeks.
And did you find that all the work went in the early stages?
It took about 5 weeks. for the sculptor to be entirely removed. Because of the way the kind of audience responded, there was kind of a restriction on the number of blocks that was taken each day.
Yeah, because I can imagine if people were able to go to a gallery and just take everything away, then they might think, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of brought out the best and the worst in people.
And what was people's reaction to it? Did you find that they were surprised to be able to take something away?
Yeah, initially they can be quite confused and surprised. And then I think their kind of gaze changes from a kind of general all over sculpture or art appreciation gaze into a much more acquisitional kind of look at the piece. And they'd also notice details much more as to whether they want one piece or a different piece, or actually what they wanted was the piece that's just been taken and they wish they'd had that one. And they kind of notice the variations between the pieces, the different characters that I depicted. There's about 5 or 6 different styles of blocks, and the way they've been fired brings out different colours and finishes on them.
So this is right back at the beginning of the show then, before everyone.
Yeah, so this would have been the opening night.
And how does it feel? Do you like that idea as an artist that people are sort of taking things away rather than just looking at things on a wall or in a gallery space?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the power of objects and living with artwork and having it in your home and as part of your daily life. So I'm delighted if people want to take things away and have them. And I think it's a nice way of exploring people accessing art, as well as just being able to go and visit visit them to see in institutions, not actually have them or hold them, or examine them as part of their lived experience.
Yeah, it's definitely a different thing being able to sort of touch an object as well and have it in your own space rather than just seeing it in a gallery space or on the wall.
Mm. Yeah, and there's such a power structure in a gallery or a museum about kind of withholding artwork and letting people see things but not touch them and not take them.
I can imagine as well, did it feel quite brave to just be able to let people take things away rather than be able to touch things? Some artists I feel are quite precious about their work as well. They want things to be very much taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, particularly with ceramics, it can be a bit nerve-wracking as to things are maybe going to get broken or collapse or but it's quite thrilling really seeing people interact in that way and wanting things and that kind of element of desiring things and desiring and how that decision-making process plays out in people's mind, I think is really interesting to see and to watch.
Was there more work that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So secondly, I wanted to talk about a piece called Accolade, which arose out of a residency I did in China in a place called Jingdezhen, where it's kind of like the birthplace in many ways of ceramics, and particularly of porcelain. They have some incredible porcelain there. At that sort of time, I really wanted to explore ideas around chance and our kind of ideas of and notions of success and also hidden biases at play. And it led to a collaboration with a statistician called Professor David Spiegelhalter. And it centered around these ceramic trophies, which are all kind of slumped and distorted, mainly in the making process. So a lot of them are kind of overfired, which led to them collapsing a little bit in the kiln, something that normally you try and avoid. But I tried to work with for this piece. And so I displayed them mainly on this conveyor belt. So they were kind of rotating around during the course of the show. The belt itself was kind of more used to transporting sushi rather than artwork, but I felt it worked really well for this and seemed appropriate for this sort of piece. And each of these trophies was available for sale to visitors. But inside I hid over £2,000 worth of gold bullion. So blocks of gold were kind of distributed randomly throughout the works. And then in a kind of additional layer to the work, I worked with Professor Spiegelhalter to develop a app on iPads in the exhibition space, so that if you were interested in purchasing one of the pieces, you would have to submit to 20 questions on the iPad app, and that would kind of look into or ask you about your social circumstances. So perhaps, whether you went to fee-paying school, whether you were responsible for doing the cleaning in your household, your personal characteristics and things like that. And from your responses, that would determine a personalized price, with the aim being to kind of make it more egalitarian, and account for some of the hidden biases normally at play in the art world. And so two people might get very different prices for the same artwork, and it would kind of tend to vary from about, I think, £8 to about £800 would be the most. And then kind of throughout the course of the show, the trophies would be purchased and removed, and then taken home, potentially smashed to see if there was gold bullion inside them or not. Yeah, so that was the other piece I wanted to mention.
Great, thank you, Lawrence. And how do you come up with an idea? So those both shows that you mentioned, can you talk us through a bit of your process?
Yeah, it's kind of what I'm interested in, or going through at the time, or quite often what I'm annoyed about, and I'm finding irritating or interesting in my in my daily life. So Tate Stop was very much about my time working in offices, and kind of exploring that in more depth and trying to really work out what I thought about it, and kind of commemorate it and think about the amount of time I'd been doing that and how I could communicate that and make work around that. And then Accolade was more, I was really interested about ideas of success and what is success, and why people spend their time chasing these goals, and what is success to one person may be very different to somebody else, but there's an enormous pressure to conform and to chase similar things, I think. So that was kind of how Accolade came about. And then I was also very interested in how there was the potential for differential pricing and personalized pricing within the art world to kind of change things, so that it kind of took into account the unfairness of life and the role that the kind of chance and success, chance and luck really plays just such a big role in how people's lives evolve, I think. And I kind of wanted to look into that a bit more and think about that, and think about how that could affect how the work was accessed.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how, you kind of see an idea through from that quite abstract idea at the start to then thinking, sort of working with ceramics and starting to think, actually, how could you make that idea sort of be in a physical space, as well as we were talking about working with the statistician, so getting other people involved to help develop your work, or in that idea, or that example being the app that you worked on.
Yeah. I mean, I like to work on kind of a few ideas, but in quite a lot of detail. I kind of enjoy kind of looking at one thing for quite a long period of time and seeing where it ends up, but keep on going and going and going, and kind of think about all the little decisions that kind of come into play along the way, and how they're arrived at and what difference they make.
Great, thank you. And did you have a creative prompt for people watching at home?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, and kind of the decision-making process that goes along with making work. And there's so many tiny decisions that we kind of have to factor in, or I try and factor into my work, especially especially important if you're kind of working with something over which you can't have that much control, or you're kind of working with materials like ceramics, which is inherently kind of unpredictable and uncontrollable in some ways. So you're kind of left with these kind of decisions that you do have control over, And sometimes you can get kind of stuck and hung up over which way to go, I think. And something that I sometimes do is use a coin to decide if I'm kind of hung up on, oh, should I be using this material or should I be using that material, or should this glaze look black or should it look green? And I kind of actually I kind of use this coin that I made, that's a ceramic coin that I made from for another project, but it kind of just has I don't know if you can see, probably has like a no, which is actually in gold on that side, and then it has like a yes, just in terracotta clay on the other side. It's a bit like chocolate as well. But yeah, so I use that sometimes to decide or to help me decide. And you can kind of use it in a couple of different ways. You could kind of use it and be like, oh, should I use this color or that color, or should I make a sculpture out of clay, or should I make a sculpture out of wood? And you could kind of let the coin kind of guide you through that if you wanted, and kind of submit your decision to that and use it like heads or tails. And you know, if it lands on tails, then I'm going to go outside and paint a picture, and if it lands on heads, I'm going to stay inside and make a sculpture, which could kind of take you into some new directions and try some new things out that you didn't know you had in you, or were kind of going to get anything out of. But what I kind of tend to veer more towards as a way of how to using it as a prompt is to throw it and then see what it comes up with, and then think about why that matters, as to why it matters, whether a glaze is maybe black or whether it's green or not, and why maybe the black would be better, because then it looks more like the things that we associate with black. You know, it might look more like a bronze or it kind of has all the connotations about darkness and these sort of things that you might want to bring into play with your work. So I kind of try to use it as a way of exploring why the decision matters and reconnecting with why I want it to go in a particular direction rather than another direction, and why it should actually be black and not green. And then kind of reconnecting with or kind of highlighting what your desire and what you actually want in the making process. It can be a really useful way of prompting it. And it's kind of like, oh, you know, you toss a coin and you're not sure whether you want to eat sushi or you know, a Chinese takeaway, and then once you're told you're going to eat sushi, you're suddenly like, oh no, I actually want a Chinese takeaway because, you know, of X, Y, and Z, and that's something that I find quite helpful if I kind of find myself at a crossroads and I'm not sure whether to go one way or the other, or why I should go one way rather than the other.
Thank you, Lawrence. That sounds like a really interesting approach. And yeah, nice to know that also sometimes you don't have to go with the decision that your coin or your sort of dice suggests.
Yeah.
It just be used to help justify.
Yeah, and it can kind of provoke that reaction or that desire in you, which is kind of what you want to follow.
Thank you. And you touched on it already, but I just wanted to ask you, as well as that, just thinking about your work, especially around sort of success and failure, and especially working in ceramics, for anyone who's worked with ceramics, sometimes things will enter the kiln, so basically a really hot oven, and come out totally different to how they went in. Was it a sort of conscious decision to show work that maybe other people would have maybe thrown in the bin or accepted as a failure?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to. I mean, I was kind of interested how trophies are kind of like these like emblems of success and perfection and things, and then kind of making the trophy itself fail. So it didn't actually quite look like a proper nice fancy trophy that you get in an award show. Yeah, I thought there's kind of definite beauty and definite interest in these things that some people or a lot of people or most people would consider failures, and would typically be discarded or overlooked or rejected.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see that they could also be part of a sort of finished work as well, or those like works in process or things that haven't quite worked out.
Yeah, and in some ways it's kind of harder in some ways to achieve a well slumped piece of ceramics rather than actually one that doesn't slump in some ways. So it's kind of interesting about why that one's more valued than another as well.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining us today to chat through some of your work, and experience of being an artist. So just as a reminder, this is all part of our Discover Creative Careers Week here at Wising. So from the 1st to the 5th of March, we'll be chatting to 10 of our studio artists live over YouTube. So do feel free to join them on the live stream, or you can catch them back on the wisingbroadcast.art website for the rest of the week. That's it for today. So do join us later at 5 o'clock, and we'll be chatting to Sally Plowman. Thanks, Lawrence, for now.
Thanks very much.
See more people later.